No, I'm not reporting on any announcement or anything, sadly, but I've been thinking. Warner Brothers owns DC, and they own a bunch of gaming studios. So why is it that only two of them ever seem to be making superhero action games? And then only for Batman and low-level characters like in the Suicide Squad. Injustice is the only game series outside of a nearly decade-old LEGO game that has us play as a superhero not part of the Batman family. And NetherRealm has done a great job with it. Though maybe it's time to take a break and make a change. They've been making Mortal Kombat and Injustice games on and off every 2 years for about a decade now, only making fighting games for the past 2 console generations. Maybe it's time they try a new genre, and they make it for a DC character who has yet to have gotten their own solo game, Flash. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this idea spawned from a cool factoid I heard years ago from a Digital Trends article that no longer exists, to be honest. Apparently Ed Boon, director of NetherRealm, Injustice, and the Mortal Kombat franchise, said his favorite superhero is the Flash. People on Twitter believe it, but I guess it doesn't really quite matter if it's true or not. It's more so the reason I connected NetherRealm to the Flash. NetherRealm has treated the character with a lot of respect with how many premiere skins he got in Injustice 2, and how much depth he's given in the story. He's the only one with a complete redemption arc in the first Injustice game, and the only one Batman trusts implicitly who changes sides. Well, aside from maybe Catwoman. But that's because they're banging, let's not lie. So maybe Ed Boon's favorite character isn't the Flash, but he seems like a character the studio has a lot of reverence for. At the same time, he's a character with no solo adaptations in video games, unless you count the canceled game from years ago. As to why NetherRealm should make a non-fighting game, is to spread their creative wings, so to speak. Ed Boon and supposedly NetherRealm have been interested in making something other than a fighting game for years, since 2012 to be exact. Back in July of that year, Ed Boon told Eddie McCouch of GameSpot that if the first Injustice game does well, that could be the first step in making a game in another genre. From their beginning, NetherRealm has wanted to make more than just fighting games, and this hasn't changed. Reports from PlayStation Lifestyle and Event Hubs in 2019 say that there's still interest from NetherRealm in making a game in another genre. But Event Hubs themselves specifically reported that NetherRealm has a game in the works that's not Injustice or Mortal Kombat. Is that a Flash game? I have no idea if it's even a DC game or an action game. This at least tells me that they are not only still open to making a game that's not Injustice or Mortal Kombat, but also they are already branching out. An action game based on the Flash is within that wheelhouse. NetherRealm has already mastered the art of fun combat with their fighting games. Taking their combo-focused gameplay to an action game centered around a character who needs talented developers would be the perfect way to rock the gaming space again. But what could that look like? Obviously, as I have stated many times before, I am no video game developer. I have no idea how difficult or complicated these things would be to make. I barely have an idea of why one would be fun, but I feel like if I'm going to make this pitch, I should pitch gameplay concepts too that I think NetherRealm is the best suited to pulling off, or at least some that just make sense for the game about Flash. Like a health bar for Central City. Now hear me out, I'm not talking about like in Superman Returns, the Xbox 360 game. It shouldn't be where if the city dies you lose, more like if you ignore too many crimes or just spend too much time just free roaming doing nothing. Central City's health bar goes down, and the closer it gets to 0, the more it starts looking like Gotham City. Fun fact, this idea is actually based on the comic lore that Central City has more supervillains per capita than Gotham. Logically, should the Flash shirk on his duties, it should get really bad for Central City. Like, really bad. Like, Gotham bad. But should the Flash or the player do their due diligence, it should start looking though like Metropolis should the Flash like do his job or remain like Central City. Because I honestly can't tell the difference between Central City and Metropolis, to be honest. Whichever art style fits their fancy. This would add a much needed mechanic to keep the open world both interesting and dynamic, or add replay value to a linear story, going even farther than Batman Arkham Knights or Spider-Man PS4's random crime alerts. Gives the city some actual function in the gameplay rather than just a time killer. Because I love Spider-Man Miles Morales right now as I'm playing through it, but it's kind of old just redoing like these different crimes and stuff like that, and the same thing happened to Batman Arkham Knight. As for the gameplay mechanics though, like themselves, while I would expect there to be a few speedster villains, possibly from an accident with the Speed Force, there does need to be regular powerless criminals. Speedsters can pose a gameplay challenge, but the slow-moving regular enemies should appear outside of just punching them faster than they can hit you. I would recommend doing what neither the Arkham games nor Spider-Man games have done, and actually put an emphasis on protecting and saving people. Regular criminals really don't pose much of a threat to the Flash. He runs so fast that he can time travel. I mean, come on. He runs so fast that he can time travel. He sometimes quadruples the speed of light. But they do pose a threat to normal people. Make a slowdown mechanic, where the Flash is running faster than a normal game character would, but not necessarily out of control as he would free roaming around the city. This would happen when criminals are firing bullets or attacking civilians, and he has to push his mind and reflexes to the max, not just his feet. The player has to make sure to run around as the Flash, either automatically catching the bullets or with an added button press, making sure that no one gets hurt. He should even be able to take weapons out of enemy hands and punch them while he's going too fast to be seen. In a bullet sequence, letting a civilian take a fatal hit brings down Central City's health bar, or you fail this section. Okay, I would prefer the former to keep from being too frustrated, but it would make saving people an actual gameplay mechanic for once. And it doesn't have to only apply to catching bullets and stopping crowbars. This slowdown function can appear when the Flash needs to rebuild structures before they collapse, or you as the Flash have to run in and out of a burning building to get as many people out as possible. If you get enough or save enough, Central City's health bar goes up or down. This should not only play into the story, but capitalize on the power Flash is known for. Not to mention that it will be a gameplay mechanic people can't experience anywhere else, and actually thrive off of what makes superheroes so heroic in the first place. You know, not beating people up, but actually saving people. I mean, you can't really save anybody in Injustice. It's kind of a fighting game. It's kind of how that game works. That's not to say there shouldn't be combat, of course. A Flash game in my mind would honestly work with a free-flow combat system like Batman, or even less free-flow like Spider-Man. But having NetherRealm means that we can have a more in-depth and complex combat system. One that utilizes combos and specials rather than just button mashing and dodging. An added feature for beating up normal criminals or non-speedsters could be that when they get punched, they start flailing in slow motion. I can picture doing the combos Flash can do in Injustice, but in a three-dimensional space with even more mix-ups and ways to extend the combo. The combat should be not only about how many times you can hit the enemy, but how fast you can clear out the combat room. This will set it apart from other superhero games and give it something special that won't be matched by any other hero's solo outing. A Flash game would be epic. It could really use Flash's powers to the fullest if put into talented hands. I really believe NetherRealm could be those talented hands they wanted to branch out this way. But why the Flash? Why not just stick to the superheroes they're already doing? Because DC should branch out from not just Batman and low-powered superheroes. So far, the most powerful DC character we've played as or are going to play as in an action game is King Shark in Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. And even he's not an actual hero. Plus, King Shark doesn't have all that interesting a power set, he's still able to fit into a third-person shooter mold. Of course, LEGO Batman and Injustice have given us more powerful characters, but they aren't action games. This is the one thing I respect Marvel games for doing. They have allowed developers to test out many different high and low-power superheroes between just Spider-Man PS4 and Marvel's Avengers. Admittedly, Marvel's Avengers doesn't do his characters all that well in the long run, but I appreciate the attempt. DC has the quality, but I do have to respect Marvel's attempts at variety. I wish WB would put their studios to good use and take away the one thing Marvel is doing exceptionally well in video games and do it themselves. Sony has found a lot of success in letting their studios do something new. WB could see the same success, and I think The Flash poses the correct challenges to NetherRealm that can lead to a good game. Is there a different superhero you think NetherRealm should tackle? A different studio who should take out on The Flash? Let me know in the comments, like and subscribe, check out the channel's social media accounts, and check out the link to the books I've published on Amazon below. If you like comic books, you may like at least one of them.